I am excited to have with me today Jonathan Freeman. And Jonathan Freeman leads the spiritual care and wellness division for Cone Health. And welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
We are approaching the holiday season and holiday seasons that and celebrations that are connected to many different cultures and religions and backgrounds. And so we just wanted to, we wanted to talk to you so that we can just talk about how you all manage celebrating and honoring all of the different religions and cultures that really make us who we are. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us really about why spiritual and wellness, what led you to
Sure.
that work?
Sure. We have a different wellness team that really is helping to focus really on well-being matters. So when we use the word wholeness, we are treating the whole person through the spiritual care department. So, our employee assistance counseling program,
Mhm.
goes up through the through spiritual care and pastoral care, and we also have a healing touch practitioner on staff. So mind, body, and spirit are represented within this department in terms of mental well-being and spiritual well-being. Those are absolutely things that our department is focused in.
Yes.
But part of our mission is to treat the whole person
Mhm.
and to have very sensitivity to the topic that we're talking about today on religious diversity. So we seek in the chaplaincy arena to be respectful of people, regardless of what their faith tradition is,
Mhm.
and to also recognize that there are many patients and employees who don't have any particular religious faith tradition. They
Mhm.
may be agnostic or atheist or humanist and not, align with any particular faith tradition. So, our department is one that seeks to honor and respect that because our main goal as chaplains is to be able to have conversations with patients, with our coworkers around matters that have to do with their spirituality. And
Mhm.
so we can be spiritual and not necessarily religious. And some of our religious traditions certainly fall within that spiritual understanding of how do we arrive at an understanding of what brings meaning and purpose to our lives as human beings. And so when we think about all of us as human beings, as spiritual creatures, that's a part of who we are, that can get expressed in many different ways. Religion is just one of those. And so, when it comes to the topic of religious diversity, you've given me a very difficult topic to talk about today, because even within each of the faith traditions, there can be, a wide variety of understanding of how that faith is lived out,
Mhm.
and how much a particular culture may influence the way that religious observances are expressed from region to region. So it can be very complicated to understand all of those things and to be able to speak clearly about them, because there's wide variety in each of those traditions. So
Ab- Absolutely. And I think that sometimes, knowing that there are times that maybe we will shy away from even talking about anything that's outside of what we're comfortable with because we don't want to say the wrong thing, or we want to make sure we're honoring that religion or that spirituality in a way that's respectful
yeah,
to the people.
absolutely. And so some of the tension that I'm feeling just having this conversation with you, to be quite
Mhm.
frank, is
Mhm.
not wanting to say anything that's going to be incorrect or offensive to somebody or to a particular faith tradition. And so, absolutely, I think that is one of the things that keeps us from having those very real conversations. I will say that I think in the midst of crisis of this pandemic,
Mhm.
I think we are in a rich opportunity to really reflect on, what do we have in common? And how do we lean on our separate resources with the understanding that we are all in a time of great need? And when it comes to drawing on meaning and purpose, we've really ratcheted up the need to really focus on that and to be there with each other in the midst of all of that. So one of the things, from my perspective, that I've noticed during the pandemic is a much more willingness to talk openly about mental health concerns. And, I think that is also true when it comes to our spirituality. How do we maintain in this very grueling work environment without being in touch with spiritual resources and our spirituality, and being able to say, here are the things that matter most to me. And I'm
Mhm.
continuing to come to work because this is the purpose that I gather out of that. And,
That's right.
my hope would be that there would continue to be more conversations that are occurring with our coworkers, around what all of our common needs right now. So.
Yep. Yep. That's so good. That just really nails it, Jonathan, because if we don't open the door for dialogue, we'll stay pretty much where we are, right?
Yeah.
You all take the time to recognize different holidays and religious holidays or celebrations. You all have done that for a very long time. Tell me a little bit about how that came to be and kind of, that fits in, of course, with wholeness, right? Because
Yeah,
we say
sure.
all the time, hey, we want you to bring your whole self to work. We don't want you to leave parts of you there. But then when we don't acknowledge the other parts, then it's like, well, can I really bring my whole self to work?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Kiva, I think, the impetus behind that from this department to, provide education is twofold. One, to so that we can have an increased sensitivity around, our coworkers who may be in a particular observance of a religious holiday, to where we know and can be curious and can be respectful of that time. So, just general education around those traditions is something that the department has sought to do for sure. I think the other reason for that is to generally let our coworkers know that there are many different ways in which we can be spiritual. And I think that the part of the initiative is to educate people on what it is that a chaplain does. And sometimes there is a misunderstanding that we are here as religious workers, and that is not our main charge. Our primary charge is to be present with people in, again, from that wholeness perspective. If we're not doing well physically, we believe that that's going to compromise how we're doing mentally and how we're doing spiritually. I think it's important for us to be very respectfully curious, is the way that I would put that. I mean, sometimes we tend to think about things that separate us as human beings, and we tend to want to highlight those as I'm different than you are, and to highlight the difference. But if we can lean into conversations where we are respectful in our curiosity, instead of highlighting, hey, well, you don't believe the right thing, and it being a divisive conversation. All of what we have done and seek to continue to do, we are looking for some ways currently to where we can get that information out, other than through an email, to where people will have that at their fingertips. So, yeah.
when we talk about this season and the giving season and holidays and stuff, there's a lot of focus put on that toward the end of the year, right? Because it's so many. But I want to get your opinion about, as we go out throughout the year, and I think you all exhibit this by sending out all the things that you do. But are there any tips or anything for people that they can do all year long? Like, it's not just about this time of year, it's just highlighted a lot, right? And
Sure.
so, which it's interesting how retail works, right? And so, um, we already got holiday stuff in the store.
Yeah.
And so it's just a big thing. But so what are some things that you could tell us that would help us stay inquisitive and respectfully curious all year long?
Sure, sure. No, I think you've said something very important, Kiva. We tend to highlight this time as being an opportunity for religious observance, and I think it may not be correct to say that this is when a majority of the religious holidays occur. I think it is actually when you really look at world religions and the calendar of their festivals and their religious, holidays, those are actually go throughout the year. And so, some faith traditions would have their much more significant meaning behind events that occur, at other times of the year. But I think Christmas in our culture, Christianity
Yeah,
is certainly the predominant.
yeah,
And when you think about things like Christmas trees and some of the things that have evolved in how we observe that, that has both shaped our culture, and culture tends to shape religion. There are times in history where different faith traditions tend to influence others, and where we have what's called syncretism, to where we can take two different faith traditions and a blending of them together. So around, the latter part of this month, for instance, there's Halloween that can trace some roots back to some of Gaelic religion, and and All Saints Day for Christianity, and the practice of going door to door, and for what's become trick or treat in our culture does have some religious connections to some of those Gaelic religions that go way back to a time where humanity didn't have an understanding of why it's getting darker more at this time of year.
that's very interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's very interesting, and that's just a great example
yeah,
of how deeply rooted things are, and around culture, and how it all blends together.
yeah. But
So
going back to your question though, I
yeah,
think it's important for us to be mindful that because our culture tends to really highlight Christmas, that's not only for Christians a religious
mhm,
holiday, it's also deeply ingrained in culture. We tend to have that as the highlight, and we forget that there are a lot of folks that we may be working with or that we may be treating who are patients of ours, where their high holy day may fall at a very different time of the year. And to
yeah,
remain curious about that and to engage in conversations. So, speaking as a chaplain, I may go into a patient's room who has a faith tradition that I may know very little about. And so, my
hmm,
training would suggest to be curious about that, to ask the patient, how can I best support you with regard to ritual observance? And sometimes we will do the best that we can, and sometimes we reach out to to faith leaders who
hmm.
can come in and provide special services to that patient if they are requested.
So while we're talking about holidays, I do have to say this just because this, I've known this, but have never really paid a lot of attention to it. But we think about Thanksgiving, right?
Mhm.
And we think that everybody celebrates Thanksgiving, right? Because it's a time of giving, it's family, it's food, right? And so, but the Native Americans, that's not something that they celebrate, right?
Mhm.
Some of them.
Yeah,
And so that's just an example of how we'll try to lump everybody into, yes, we're all celebrating this, and that's just not the case.
yeah,
So yeah, so just being sensitive to that and knowing that is extremely important and contributes to a person's wholeness. So
sure, absolutely. Yeah, well
yeah,
said. Yeah,
yeah. So so as thank you, Jonathan, so much for your time
yeah,
and this, and for what your department does, right? And the focus and the work that you all do, 'cause it's extremely important. And you talked about COVID and the fact that, you know, people are pulling on whatever they have, whatever that spiritual piece is for them, to help get through this. And that's what it's going to take.
One of the great joys for me in this role is working with a team of people who are so dedicated to that work. And, when we interview chaplains, we want there to be a passion for this work. And
Mhm,
we want
mhm.
there to be, great meaning and purpose that comes through that, because that translates into the kind of care that we're able to give. And so, one of my great joys and honors is to work with this team. It's a great group of people who are in this line of work for all the right reasons. So,
Well, Jonathan, this has been lovely, and I have enjoyed the time with you. And what some of the things that I think that we can take away from this is it's all year long, right? It's not just 1 month, it's not just 1 week. It's about recognizing the individuality of religions and spiritual
mhm.
uh, care and all of that in a way that it's recognized and accepted and appreciated um, every day of the year.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah. Kiva,
well,
it's
thank,
a joy to
yeah.
be with you. Thanks for this opportunity. And if there are ways in which, our coworkers can draw on support of chaplains, we're right here with you.